When I graduated from high school, I became a construction worker and hated every second of it. I had always wanted to work in radio, so when I turned 24 and got fired from my construction job, I decided it was time to pursue my dream. After many attempts, I finally landed a job at a small AM radio station in Belmont, North Carolina. When I started there, I worked 3 days a week. Friday nights were dedicated to high school football, Saturdays to college football, and Sundays to all-day church programming until 10 p.m., when the station signed off the air. It was during my third weekend working there that something strange happened. On a Sunday night, at around 8 o'clock, I found myself alone in the control room. Suddenly, I heard the voice of an older woman behind me saying,
"I can't believe you did that."
It was followed immediately by the voice of a younger woman saying,
"I can't wait to see you."
Then a man with a gruff voice said,
"I'm coming right now."
Immediately after, I heard someone pounding on the front door. I was frozen in my chair, filled with a mix of fear and confusion. From where I sat, I could see a person standing outside the door, but I couldn't make out their face. All I could see was the silhouette of a person. I remembered being told not to open the door for anyone, so I quickly dialed 911. The person at the door started pounding on it, frantically, growing more and more desperate by the second. Suddenly, the front door and lobby were bathed in very bright lights. The man outside disappeared from my line of sight. Just as quickly as the lights appeared, they vanished. I was still unable to move, overcome by a lingering sense of shock and fear. 5 minutes later, a Belmont police officer arrived at the door. I made my way to the door, where the officer informed me that the man at the door had been involved in a high-speed chase earlier that evening. He had crashed his car and was running from the police. But what about the voices I heard? Were they just there trying to warn me? Relieved but still shaken, I closed the door and took a moment to gather my thoughts. It was a chilling experience, one that reminded me of the thin line between reality and the unknown. 2 days later, I learned that the voices I heard in the control room were the radio station's police scanner, which had a short. It was picking up wireless telephone conversations. From that day forward, I always wondered if there was something more to that night, something beyond mere coincidence.
Working at a large AM radio station in the desolate Southwest, every morning the morning show team would gather for a meeting at the eerie hour of 3:30 a.m. One early morning, the new security guard, on only his second day, brought a strange woman into the studio. He claimed she was the new co-host for the 9 to noon show. This was odd. The 9 to noon host was fiercely independent and not one to share the spotlight. As the woman sat with us in the studio, she began to act increasingly erratic, repeatedly asking where the 9 to noon host was. My hair stood on end as her behavior became more and more unpredictable. I knew I had to do something. I told her that the 9 to noon host worked in our offices across the street and offered to walk her to the front door and show her how to get there. Of course, we didn't have any offices across the street. I left a note for my coworker to call the police and quickly escorted the alleged new co-host out of the building. As she stepped out the door and it locked behind her, I turned to the security guard and sternly told him not to let her back in. As she walked across the street, the police arrived. After searching her and her car, they found a knife on her person, and in her car, a gun, a machete, and a shovel. 2 months later, at her trial, she was declared insane and institutionalized for 2 years. Despite an order of protection, she continued to write letters professing her love for the 9 to noon host. The security guard lost his job.
I used to work at a radio station in the South, and I had many encounters with something that lurked in that building. Every night, from 1 a.m. to 9 a.m., I would prepare for the morning show and run the board. For 2 hours each night, it was just me and a security guard on our side of the building. The television station was on the other side, but they never ventured to our side. The studio was on the second floor, while the offices and lunchroom were on the first floor. There was only one staircase. There was one hallway that led to the lunchroom, a hallway that always felt colder than the rest of the building. It was like something was always watching me as I walked that hallway. I would hear footsteps, like a woman walking in high heels, but I never saw anyone. And sometimes I would hear the sound of coins dropping on the floor. One night, as Roger, the security guard, and I were walking down that hallway together, we looked at the microwave in the lunchroom. "Somebody left the microwave open," I said. And as soon as those words left my mouth, the door to the offices slammed shut right in front of us. And then we heard it, the sound of high heels walking away behind us. Another night, as I was leaving the lunchroom, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure. The second I saw the figure, the entire hallway went dark. Usually when the power went out, emergency lights would turn on in the stairway leading to the second floor, but not this time. The emergency generator never came on. I was very scared and had to find my way to the second floor by touch and memory alone. It was probably one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. Despite being kept under lock and key, the emergency generator had been tampered with. No suspect was ever caught. I can't help but wonder what secrets are hidden still in that building.